Picture a regular guy walking into a dealership in 1969. He's not a race team, he's not a factory driver, he's just somebody with a down payment, a signature, and maybe some bad judgment. And somehow, the salesman across the desk can hand him the keys to a car carrying a NASCAR engine, or a Can-Am engine, or a big block so underrated the window sticker almost reads like evidence. That's the part that still feels like it shouldn't have been allowed. These weren't normal engines, they were loopholes with carburetors, racing programs with license plates, corporate decisions that somehow made it all the way to the showroom floor. Some were built because NASCAR demanded a street version. Some slipped through dealer paperwork meant for taxi cabs. Some got rated politely because the honest number made insurance companies nervous. And one of them arrived about 5 minutes before the whole muscle car party got rated. These are 5 American engines Detroit probably should never have sold to regular people. Not just the fastest, the least sensible, the ones that only exist because racing rules, dealer tricks, and corporate ego left a door open. Number 5, and we start with the one nobody was watching. The 1970 Buick GSX Stage 1. Here's what the public saw. Buick, the quiet brand, wood on the dash, the car your grandfather drove to church. Here's what was actually under the hood. A 455 big block that was, quietly, one of the meanest torque motors anybody built in 1970. Buick rated it at a modest 360 horsepower. The number they couldn't dress down was the torque, 510 pound-feet, more low-end shove than the street expected from anything wearing a Buick badge. And it made that wall right off idle, which meant the GSX didn't need to rev to win. It just leaned on you and went. Whether the real horsepower was higher than 360 is an argument that still runs in the comments, so I'll leave the legend a legend. What's not in dispute is the effect. This thing could run close enough to the big-name muscle that the badge started to feel like a setup. Buick's crime wasn't building the loudest engine in the room, it was building the one nobody was looking at and selling it under the most respectable nameplate on the lot. Number 4, the 1970 Boss 429. The engine's so big, Ford had to rebuild the car around it. Ford needed to go NASCAR racing, and the rules said they had to sell street cars carrying the racing engine. That engine was the Boss 429, a semi-Hemi head motor built for one job, winning at 200 miles an hour. The problem was that it physically would not fit in a Mustang. The heads were so wide they wouldn't clear the shock towers. A normal company picks a different car. Ford moved the shock towers, redesigned the front suspension, relocated the battery to the trunk, cut a huge scoop in the hood. This wasn't a Mustang getting a bigger engine. This was a Mustang being altered so the engine could survive the rulebook. They rated it at 375 horsepower. Almost nobody believes that number, and the real output is one of the great debates in muscle history. So I'll keep it as lore. But look at the hardware. Valves like coffee cans, ports you could put a fist through, a thoroughbred race motor barely detuned, sold with a warranty. And the result was miserable for a normal buyer. No air conditioning, rough manners, a cramped bay, a car that made far more sense at a NASCAR oval than at the grocery store. Ford lost money on everyone and didn't much care because winning on Sunday was the whole point. Number 3, the 1970 Chevelle SS444, the LS6. This one's different, and it belongs here for a different reason. The LS6 wasn't sneaked through a back door. It walked through the front door at the exact moment that door was about to be welded shut. 454 cubic inches, 7.4 liters. Rated at 450 horsepower in a mid-size car you could order off any lot. Among factory-rated muscle engines, the LS6 was standing right at the top of the hill. Solid lifters, big port heads, and 11-to-1 compression that demanded the highest octane at the pump. A barely contained race engine in a family body that would light the tires in any gear. And here's why it makes the list. It arrived right as the walls closed in. Tightening emissions rules, the insurance crackdown, and a fuel crisis were all bearing down at once. Within a year or two, compression dropped, ratings collapsed, and the window slammed. The LS6 was the last fully legal swing before the cops, the regulators, and the accountants all showed up at once. That's what makes it evidence. It's the high water mark, stamped with the exact date the tide went out. Number 2, the 1969 Camaro ZL1. GM had a hard rule in the late 60s. No engines over 400 cubic inches in the Camaro. So how does a 427 race motor end up in one? through a backdoor ordering system called COPO, Central Office Production Order, meant for fleet stuff like taxis and special paint. A few sharp dealers worked out that the same paperwork could order a Camaro with an engine the regular catalog would never allow. And not just any 427, the ZL1 was an all-aluminum 427, a genuine Can-Am racing engine, aluminum block, and heads, at a time when that was exotic and barely street-tested. This wasn't a Camaro option, it was a racing invoice attached to a Camaro body. Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower. Period racers and builders have argued for decades that the real number was higher, but the documented rating was 430, and that's where I'll leave it. Here's the kicker. The option cost so much it nearly doubled the price of the car, so most of the few built sat unsold on lots. Only 69 were ever made. 69, a street car with an aluminum Can-Am engine, ordered like a taxi cab. So expensive that Chevrolet effectively hid it from its own customers. Everyone that exists is there because somebody found a crack in GM's own rulebook and drove a race car straight through it. And number one, the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. With the 426 Hemi, the engine and the car both built purely to beat a rule. Start with the engine. The 426 Hemi was never meant for the street. It was a NASCAR motor, hemispherical chambers, breathing like nothing else in Detroit, and so dominant that NASCAR effectively forced Chrysler to sell a street version to keep racing it. So they did. Took the race motor, made the minimum changes, and sold it, rated at 425 horsepower, to anyone with the cash. How much it really made is the most famous debate in all of muscle lore, so I'll let it stay lore. Then the car, to win on the superspeedways, Dodge bolted an 18-inch wing onto a Charger and grafted a pointed steel nose cone onto the front. It looked absurd, and it worked. A race-prepped Daytona became the first NASCAR stock car to break 200 miles an hour. They only had to build a handful for the street to make it legal, and of those, only around 70 got the Hemi. The wildest engine of the era in the strangest body of the era, both created to beat a rulebook. And it was too weird for buyers in 1969, so they sat unsold and discounted. Today, a Hemi Daytona brings seven-figure money, with the very best cars climbing into the millions. The car nobody wanted became the most coveted muscle car on the planet. So that's the five. The quiet Buick with truck-grade shove. The Mustang Ford had to rebuild around its own engine. The Chevelle that walked through the front door right before it got welded shut. The aluminum race motor ordered through taxicab paperwork. And the winged Hemi that went from showroom joke to millionaire bait. That's the pattern. None of them were sensible. They were born from fights. NASCAR fights, dealer loopholes, horsepower wars, corporate pride, engineers trying to win before the accountants close the door. A sensible engine gets replaced and forgotten. These engines became evidence. Proof that for one short window, Detroit let regular people buy things that were too loud, too expensive, too crude, and too close to racing to ever survive modern product planning. Nobody ever fell in love with a sensible engine. So tell me which one you want to hear fire up once. Not own, not insure, not tune. Just hear once from 10 feet away. Drop it below. I read everyone. And if I left your favorite off, say so, because part 2 already has a couple of suspects lined up.